It's on life support. I didn't even finish reading it. I said I'm not going to waste my time reading it. Now, those are the stark, completely unfiltered words from US President Donald Trump, and honestly, it's a cold, hard look at the incredibly precarious state of peace talks right now. Okay, let's dive right into this, because we are currently on day 73 of the US-Iran war, and the situation is quite literally as volatile as ever.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're cutting through all the noise. Relying strictly on the facts, we are going to unpack how this 73-day conflict is actively reshaping global supply chains, diplomatic ties, and the lives of millions. There's a lot of dense fallout here, both globally and domestically, so let's get right to it.
To make sense of this massive geopolitical event, we're going to break it down into four distinct fronts. First, the diplomatic deadlock. Second, the global economic shock. Third, the crackdown inside Iran. And fourth, who feels the pain?
All right, starting us off with front number one, the diplomatic deadlock.
So, right now, efforts to actually establish a ceasefire have completely stalled out. And because of that, the vital Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Recently, Iran submitted a counterproposal to a U.S. plan for potential peace talks. Their demands? An immediate, upfront end to the war on all fronts, a halt to the U.S. naval blockade on their ports, and explicit guarantees of no further attacks. But the U.S. administration, and President Trump in particular, as we just heard, rejected this completely out of hand. In fact, they went as far as calling the proposal a piece of garbage.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how massive the chasm is between these two nations. Look at the stark contrast here. The U.S. is laser-focused on securing a nuclear commitment. They want Iranian uranium enrichment suspended for a long time, plus a pledge to never develop a nuclear weapon. Iran, on the flip side, wants an end to U.S. sanctions. Now, normally that might be negotiable, but they're also reportedly demanding U.S. war reparations. And here's the real kicker. They're demanding recognition of their sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. That last point, it's a complete non-starter, not just for the U.S., but basically for the entire world, because it would essentially give Iran a permanent stranglehold over a massive artery of global trade.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, the global economic shock.
Because these peace talks are at a total standstill, the impact is radiating outward and hitting wallets everywhere. I mean, markets reacted almost instantly. Oil shot up to over $105 a barrel right after this latest round of diplomatic rejections. This kind of sudden, massive jump really captures the immediate global anxiety surrounding this conflict and the ongoing closure of the strait.
But when you look at the longer-term projections, the sheer scale of the disruption is truly staggering. Saudi Aramco's CEO, Ahmed Nasser, issued a really stark warning to investors recently. He called this the largest ever shock to global energy supplies. Get this, 100 million barrels of oil are lost to the global economy every single week. Actually, to put that into perspective, Nasser warned that if it takes just a few more weeks to reopen the strait, we might not see oil markets fully normalize until the year 2027. We are literally talking about years of economic ripple effects here.
And you know, it's not just fuel we're talking about. It's food. The United Nations has issued an incredibly dire warning that we basically only have a few weeks to avert a massive humanitarian crisis. About a third of the world's fertilizer supply usually travels right through the Strait of Hormuz. With that waterway shut down, a UN task force director warned the resulting hit to food production could force an additional 45 million people into hunger and starvation. The closure of just this one single waterway has become a direct, immediate threat to global food security.
Now, what's really interesting about this is seeing the cascading domino effect altering daily life thousands of miles away from the actual conflict. Look at India. The Prime Minister literally had to appeal to his population of 1.4 billion people, urging them to work from home, use public transport to save fuel, and he even asked farmers to use less fertilizer. Other countries like the Philippines and Sri Lanka have been scrambling to implement policies to cushion the economic blow since the very early days of the war. It's wild to think about, but everyone, everywhere is being forced to adapt to this highly strained new reality.
Let's zoom all the way in now for Section 3, crackdown inside Iran.
So while the rest of the world is grappling with these macroeconomic shockwaves, the domestic situation on the ground inside Iran is becoming increasingly severe. The authorities have maintained a total internet blackout for months now. And since the war began back on February 28th, Iran has executed 29 individuals. The accusations against them vary, ranging from alleged ties to exiled opposition groups to spying for Israel and the U.S. In one specific case of a man executed for alleged espionage, human rights groups report that he was subjected to torture and forced to give false confessions.
The human toll of all this is perhaps brought into sharpest focus by the situation surrounding the Iranian Nobel Peace Prize winner Narges Mohammadi.
Amidst this ongoing, intense regime crackdown on dissent, Mohammadi was recently moved from prison to a hospital in Tehran due to deep concerns about her failing health. Reports are indicating that the prominent activist has lost an estimated 20 kilograms while incarcerated during this blackout.
And the domestic economy inside the country? It's essentially crumbling. A staggering 2 million jobs have been lost inside Iran. 2 million. This massive surge in unemployment is reportedly a direct result of military attacks targeting the country's vital petrochemical and steel companies. The very economic foundation for everyday citizens is just being severely compromised. So what does daily life actually look like under these conditions? Well, according to the UN, over 4,000 people have been arrested so far. Security checkpoints are highly active across the cities. And you know what's really interesting? Despite some early speculation, including comments from Donald Trump earlier in the year about supporting protesters, this war has not triggered a regime change. In fact, those main city squares that used to see deadly protests, they're now filled every single night with state-televised pro-establishment rallies. Meanwhile, everyday citizens are reporting a severe fear of protesting. They know they're risking their lives if they speak out against the establishment during this wartime crackdown.
Finally, let's wrap this up with Section 4. Who feels the pain?
Both of these nations are under immense pressure right now, but their breaking points look very, very different. For the U.S. administration, despite the really tough public rhetoric we saw earlier, there are clear strategic and political pain points. Analysts are noting a high reluctance from President Trump to go back to full-scale active shooting combat. Plus, the timing is incredibly sensitive. The president has a major trip to Beijing coming up. Politically and economically, the administration desperately wants to avoid letting this conflict explode any further, especially since the war is already causing significant economic headaches for China. They're basically trying to balance maintaining their leverage without accidentally triggering a total global economic meltdown.
Let's move to the other side and see how this builds for the Iranian regime. They are frantically improvising just to survive the economic stranglehold. Because they can't export normally through the strait, they have this massive growing buildup of unsold oil. And you can't just easily cap a gushing oil well. So this is creating immense physical and economic pressure in their system. To get by, they are getting incredibly creative. They are literally trying to export oil by train all the way to China, and they're significantly ramping up their business reliance across the Caspian Sea with Russia. They are doing quite literally whatever it takes to bypass this bottleneck.
And that brings us to the ultimate question at the very heart of this 73-day stalemate. Who can withstand this pressure the longest? On one side, you've got the sheer economic and military leverage of the United States pushing hard for a nuclear concession while trying not to tank the global economy. On the exact opposite side, you have Iran. This is a nation with a 46-year history of enduring brutal economic sanctions. They are actively showing a willingness to tough out immense pain and drastically suppress their own citizens just to maintain their footing. So will the U.S.'s leverage finally crack the regime's resolve, or is Iran more than happy to simply wait out the storm? It's a truly monumental standoff, and as we've seen, the entire world is feeling the shockwaves. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on the data as this whole situation continues to unfold.